those who are here for the first time, we have the Dharma request in the booklet. It's on this page right here. You see it says Dharma request before your lecture. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Homage to the blessed, noble, perfectly enlightened one. Namo Saranto Suchedoye Alahadi Samya Samputoche.
Namo Saranto Suchedoye Alahadi Samya Samputoche.
Let's go read together. Wu Sang Sen Sen Wei Miao Fa Bai Qian Wan Jie Nan Zhao Yu. 我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。The unsurpassed, deep, profound, subtle, wonderful Dharma in 100,000 million eons is difficult to encounter. Now that I've come to receive and hold it within my sight and hearing, I vow to fathom the thus come one's true and actual meaning. Good evening, everyone. All Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, Dharma Masters, and all good and wise advisors. Welcome to Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. We are here investigating the Avatamsaka Sutra, also called the Flower Garland Sutra. It's the text right in front of you. And today is January 3rd, 2015. We begun the new year here in the 3rd millennium, 2015. So we can start the lecture by reciting the title of the sutra. You can find on the front page. We have a very simple chant. You can chant along. So this is a chance to invoke the names of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas associated with the sutra.
Phật quang Phật Hoa Yên Trì Hoa Yên Hai Huệ Hộ Phu Sa Na Mô Ta Phật quang Phật Hoa Yên Trì Hoa Yên Hai Huệ Hộ Phu Sa Na Mô Ta Phật quang Phật Hoa Yên Trì Hoa Yên Hai Huệ Hộ Phu Sa Na Mô Ta Phật quang Phật Hoa Yên Trì Hoa Yên Hai Huệ Hộ Phu Sa Na Mô Ta Phật quang Phật Hoa Yên Trì Hoa Yên Hai Huệ Hộ Phu Sa Na Mô Ta Phật quang Phật Hoa Yên Trì Hoa Yên Hai Huệ Hộ Phu Sa Na Mô Ta Phật quang Phật Hoa Yên Trì Hoa Yên Hai Huệ Hộ Phu Sa.
So if I could invite everyone to open your sutra text to page 20 and 21. We are going to begin our sutra lecture. So for those who are coming here, looks like we have mostly old faces. We're studying the Avatamsaka Sutra, and the Avatamsaka Sutra is often translated as the Flower Garland Sutra. Somebody was just talking to me the other day that he didn't like the translation of a flower garland. He thought a flower garland was just too plain, the flower garland, just a flower garland. But the reason the sutra is called a Flower Garland Sutra is because the principles in this sutra are manifold. There's many principles. And the sutra is like a strand that strings them all together, making a garland of flowers. So the sutra contains many principles in it that we all can study and investigate. And today we're actually on the chapter called the 10 Grounds, investigating the practices of a sixth ground bodhisattva, the teachings of a sixth ground bodhisattva. And although you could say the sixth ground bodhisattva is a very exalted state, it's a very accomplished bodhisattva, at the same time, it can be used to inspire and give us guidance in our own practice. Another analogy that's often given for the Avatamsaka Sutra, or the picture that it paints, is that of a hologram. If people are familiar with holograms, basically, you can look into a kind of a holographic image, and you can see a 3D image in it. And the unique part about the holographic image is if you cut the image in half and you shine light on it, the full image will appear again in each piece that you cut apart. Every part of it contains all of it, and in the entirety, you can see the one. And so the Avatamsaka Sutra similarly describes this state where you can say all is encompassed in the one, and one is encompassed in the all. They give the analogy of the Brahma net, the net that's supposed to be in the heavens, and basically it's this huge net, and every interstice, every place where the strings meet of the net, there's a pearl, and each of those pearls reflects all the other pearls on the net. And so in each pearl, you're going to see all the other pearls, but you still see that one pearl. And in each other pearl, you can see that one pearl as well. So that's kind of the image of the Avatamsaka Sutra. And so although this is a very high ground bodhisattva, at the same time, we're not apart from that either. So if we look deeply at it, we will see our own image in there. Just like if we look deeply at ourselves, we also see the bodhisattva's image inside. So it's a very nice contemplation, if you would like to use. So today we're on the second paragraph of the 10 ground of page 20 and 21. So what we would usually start is we read the sutra text together in Chinese and English. So what we do for the Chinese is because many people maybe don't speak Chinese as their first language. Then what we'll do is we'll read a little passage, and then we'll all read second. Then we'll follow along and read it again. So Dharma Jingfu was going to read the Chinese. 怎么念？我们就跟着。要开了吗？
该开了吗？可以。
Can you hear?
有。
Is there sound?
Yeah.
不够近。
不够近。
可以吗
？Yeah. 好，这样子哈，可以。好，我们跟着一起念。我这样子先念一遍，等一下英文就宣传师念。
所以要等一下叫他们一起，你念完我们也会再念。
对对，先念中文。
对，你念一步，然后我们一步。佛子，
菩萨摩诃萨，如是十种逆顺。
菩萨摩诃萨，如是十种逆顺。
观诸缘起，
观诸缘起。
所谓有之相续故，
有之相续故。
一心所摄故，
一心所摄故。
自业慈悲故，
自业慈别故。
不相舍离故，
不相舍离故。
三道不断故，
三道不断故。
观过去，
观过去。
现在未来故，
现在未来故，
三苦聚集故，
三苦聚集故，
因缘生灭故，
因缘生灭故，
生灭系复故，
生灭系复故，
无所有尽观故。
无所有尽观故。
好，
So we can read the English together. Disciples of the Buddha, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva contemplates tenfold back and forth cycles of prititya samutpada. That is, the continuity succession of the 12 links. How they are contained within one thought of mind, how they are distinct due to one's individual karma, how they do not mutually part from each other, how the three roads do not stray from each other, the past, the present, and the future, how sufferings accumulate, how causes and conditions arise and cease, the arising and cessation of ties and fetters, and the contemplation of nothing whatsoever and its ultimate cessation.
.今天是元月3号，大家新年，大家那么精进来听佛法，这个是人生最重要的事。然后我们能够学习到佛法，也是非常高兴，因为我们能够不断精进，我们成佛了就有份，所以非常高兴在年初的时候，那么所谓讲好的开始就是成功的一半，首先真的我们非常高兴有这种的法会跟来听法。
So today is January 3rd, the beginning of the new year. And so everybody here is very vigorous coming to the monastery at the beginning of the new year. This studying the Buddha Dharma is, you could say, the most important thing to do. It's very, very important. It's probably the most important thing we can do in our lives. And this coming to study the Dharma is something that should bring us great happiness, that we coming to study in this very precious time is something that allows us never to stop being vigorous. We can constantly move forward and cultivate. And that way, we one day will realize Buddhahood. So there's a saying that a good start is half of success. Halfway of success is having a good start. So now we're here in the beginning of the new year, starting a new year, and we're here learning the Buddha Dharma. That's very wonderful.
那晚上牧师就跟大家我们来研究这个第六地菩萨。上一次我们已经研究过第8、第9、第10，那今天也就是一个总结，总结这个以前所讲过的这个10种菩萨他所观到的所有的这个因缘名称，所以我们今天这个是非常一个重要的一个时刻，然后我们他也这个佛法真的讲起来是非常非常深奥，而且他用的这个文字然后像尤其是言文言方面，它都非常的美丽，所以这个是非常值得我们学习的。
So now we're investigating the sixth ground bodhisattva, and these are various types of contemplations he makes, 1 through 10. So last week we talked about the contemplations 8 through 10, 8, 9, and 10. And so today, what we just read is a summary of what has happened before. So this is a chance for us to see the bodhisattva's contemplations and all the various causes and conditions, all the myriad phenomenon, all the, you could say, Buddhist terminology that he uses to contemplate and understand. So this is very, very important. It's also very profound. Not just that, the words used in the Chinese is also very beautiful. It's also very well used. The classical Chinese is a very, very elegant.
像今天晚上我们的经文上，它总共都是用故来讲这个故。那这个故啊，就是我们有讲到缘故，就是原因，然后起因，然后故，还有结果的意思。所以这个就是讲到我们说因缘的因缘方面。另外，故也给我们能够温故知新，能够所以这个故，我觉得用得非常的好。写文章也可以常常用这个故温故知新，也就是说我们学过的12因缘，那它一个总结，然后我们所谓这个知新，就是知道我们一个方向。后面是这样子，后面有很多第6菩萨，还有第7，还有第8到第10、第10地，所以知道有一个方向，一个新的温故知新，一个新的一个好的方向。
温故而知新。
Yeah， 温故而知新。
往后看，然后知道什么？
温故就是 you repeat the old, you learning the old things, then you know the future.
Yeah, very fast. Okay, yeah. So in the Chinese, there is a word here. If you look on the left page, you'll see at the end of each, it comes up a number of times. It says gu, is G-U with a line going down, gu. And so it happens gu, gu, gu about 10 times. And this word gu has a couple meanings. It can mean the origin, the beginning. It can mean a cause. It can also mean the effect. And so this ties directly to the idea of the 12 links of conditioned arising or dependent origination, which we have been studying. So this is one kind of meaning of it. Another meaning that is often used is that there's a phrase called 温故知新, meaning if you review the past, 故 can mean the past, then it gives you a sense of renewal. You know what to do in the future. And so it gives us a direction. So by reviewing this teachings, we know what direction to go in. And so after the 6th ground bodhisattva, there's still the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th ground bodhisattvas. So we know the direction to move in.
那像我们修行最重要就是要明白，另外一个就是看修行有没有进步，一个很重要的就是菩提心有没有增长，这个是非常重要的。菩提心就是一个慈悲心，大慈悲心。这个也是像我们在万佛圣城这个方丈和尚一直在鼓励我们，你看一个人他修行的怎么样子，就看他慈悲心有没有增长，这样子就可以知道有没有进步。
So here we're cultivating, and we're cultivating to understand the principle. In terms of cultivation, to see if we are making any progress, one way to look at it is to see if our bodhi resolve, you can say our mind for the way, our resolve to cultivate, grows day by day. And one way you can take a look at that is to see our own compassionate heart, the compassion in our heart. Does that grow every day? Is that something that's being nurtured? The abbot at the 16,000 Buddhas often teaches us when he gives his talks about how one can look at somebody's cultivation and see if they're making any progress, to see if their heart of compassion is growing or not. Are they becoming more compassionate?
像今天晚上六地的先前地菩萨，也就是他看到我们众生在一直轮回生死，然后他真的是很苦，像我们前2天做24小时的这个念佛，真的要渡过去也不是那么简单，是真的很苦。然后你走，有时候腿痛，像我走了我现在也腿痛，就是一个苦，真的是我们众生，而且我们还是要继续修行，我们不能够说有不舒服这样子就忘记修行，所以这是个很重要的，还是要继续修行。那继续修行就是不要忘记菩提心，这个就是一个慈悲心。
So tonight we're talking about the 6th ground Bodhisattva. When often the title of the 6th ground Bodhisattva is a ground of manifestation, or right before your eyes, appearing right before your eyes. And so this Bodhisattva is here teaching, and he looks at living beings who are caught in the cycle of rebirth and sees the suffering that living beings are in, a great deal of suffering. Just like a few days ago, we had a 24-hour recitation of Amitabha Buddha's name, and it was actually a lot of suffering, having to recite all day long. Not easy, especially, for instance, myself. My leg was in a great deal of pain, and so right now I can't really use it that well. But one thing is, although there's suffering, we can't forget to cultivate. We can't retreat from our resolve to cultivate and forget our Bodhi resolve. We have to continue moving forward and increase the scope of our compassionate heart.
那我们今天晚上的六地菩萨先前地他就是看到我们众生是真的是很苦，然后就大怜悯心的心，然后来要给大家知道他所证道，然后跟大家分享，这样子来救度众生、利益众生。这样子的话，他这样子做，他的智慧会现前。然后因为第六地像这些我们所讲的，都是在讲到我们的自性里面的清净、无为、尊日这些的其实我们讲12因缘都是在观我们自己的本性，所以他证到这个六地菩萨，今天就是晚上我们所讲的一个重点。
So tonight we're talking about the 6th ground Bodhisattva, and the 6th ground Bodhisattva looks at us living beings and see that we're in a great deal of suffering, and so then he, you could say, has this great sympathy and empathy for us and wants to teach us. So he realizes, you could say, a very profound wisdom, and then he comes and teaches living beings. He goes and tries his best to be of benefit, to help living beings. So he could say his wisdom has, quote unquote, manifested. It has appeared. He has this wisdom. And in fact, this wisdom that he contemplates is just the self-nature in its purity, in that it's unconditioned. He is just contemplating this self-nature. So here when we're studying, here in the 12 links as well, is a contemplation of our self-nature.
好，像依照经文上他所讲的，就是10种，它这就是一种的 观的一个法门。第一个就是说他看到就是有知相续，就是我们12因缘从无明行识一直到老死这个12因缘，这个知就是12知，一直在相续，一直在不断的。
So here is the first of the 10 contemplations is the continuity or the succession of the 12 links, the limbs of existence. For those who might not be familiar with the 12 links, we have went over them a number of times. You can look at it on the, if you look at the pages before, basically just to give a very quick recap, it starts with ignorance, which goes to activities, or you could say very, very deep habitual unconscious patterns that we create. And then it moves to consciousness. We start discriminating out, which then moves to creating our material reality, name and form. We start labeling things, we create forms. Then it says there's the 6 sense organs, which is our actual sensory apparatus to be able to perceive the world outside. And then we have, they say, contact, which we can basically use our 6 senses to come into contact with various objects, the 6 sense objects. And then from there we have feeling, which is like or dislike when we make a contact. Then it gives rise to craving, which then gives rise to grasping, which gives rise to becoming, and then it's birth, and then that gives rise to old age, sickness, suffering, and death. So that's 12 links. So people who haven't heard the entire sequence, that's what we've been talking about these last probably about 2.5, 3 months, just talking about the 12 links in great detail. So this is what it means, that these 12 links continually go on and on and on in succession. And if you spend some time and you reflect, like today we had a little bit of a time to reflect because we had a Chan session here, you'll see that these 12 links just go on in every moment of existence and from life to life.
第二个他观就是一心守受故，就是万法唯心。最重要，我们就是我们自己的一个心，然后受了，然后所以我们万法唯心造。那这个也是像我们修行，就是我们都是要成佛，其实就是要从心里面去用心，然后像很多无论做什么事情，也都是要用心去做，用心，然后真的还是要用真诚心。当然，你像我们念佛念到真诚的话，就是你心就是佛，佛就是心。然后我们像在念经也是一样，能够念，跟着经典一直念，也是可以念到得定得智慧。这个都是我们守心在作用。所以我们没有心，那就不用修行，也不用那个。所以是讲他能够了解到，是我们一心所受的。
So the second contemplation is that how all of these are contained within one thought of the mind. There is a teaching in Buddhism that says the myriad dharmas or the myriad phenomenon all come from this mind. They're, you say in Chinese, 万法唯心. Everything comes from this mind or this thought. And so what are we doing with this thought? That's very important. In cultivation, we're all trying to become Buddhas. We are using that as our, you could say, our aim, our goal. But where do we apply our effort? We have to look at our minds right here, right now, and apply energy and apply effort. We have to be very sincere. So for instance, we might recite the Buddha's name. We're mindful of the Buddha. That's one practice. And we want to recite until our mind and the recitation of the Buddha are not two, they're one. The Buddha and our mind is the same. Then we really can enter samadhi and have great wisdom. This is also the case if we recite sutras. If we can recite sutras and be single-minded, focused, then it's the same. We can also attain samadhi, or also wisdom. We can attain prajna. So that's what we can do in our cultivation, regardless of the Dharma door we practice.
第三个就是讲自业吃别故。当然，每一个人，因为我们都是还是在娑婆世界上，我们的都要有业，这个业就有分善业、恶业，所以它有分的这个，然后你造恶业，当然就是不好，然后我们就是要尽量去造善业，然后善业它这个是有分别，那它也证到这个有每一个众生他所做不同的业的一个分别。
So the third one is how they, or this is all living beings, are distinct due to one's individual karma. They are the 12 conditioned links, are distinct due to one's individual karma. So every living being has different karma. Basically, they have different habitual patterns or things that occur to them, how they see things. And so living beings, we do various good deeds or bad deeds. We do things that are unskillful or skillful. And so in general, we want to try to not do things that are unskillful, that bring about harm, that bring about undesirable consequences, but rather try to cultivate good things. So the Bodhisattva is able to look carefully and understand all living beings and how we create our different types of karma.
第四个就是不相守离故，就是说因缘都是我们没有办法，我们都是在一起，在这样子没有办法守，没有办法离，这样子一直互相继续这样子下去。当然最重要，我们虽然要讲到真正去修行，我们是不要去执着我们所有的事情。你一执着就会产生苦，然后我们不执着就可以就没有有时候也是很难去说不执着，像我们学习佛法，我们还是有执着，直接往好的方面这样子。所以好的，我们是去执着它，但是到最后还是要守离掉的。像你要真正要证到无心无为那些，你就可以，所以就不能够再执着它，这个是很重要一点。
So the next one is how they are not mutually apart from each other. Do not mutually part from each other. So they're all interdependent. In fact, we can't leave any of them. They're all with us all the time. In true cultivation, if we really want to truly cultivate, we really want to not attach to anything, to not have anything that we hold on to. Because anywhere we hold on to and grasp, then we'll have suffering. But truly this is very hard. This is not easy. As we learn Buddhism, we begin trying to go towards the good. And we hold on to that, we hold on to the good. But at some point we also have to let that go as well. And when we let that go, only then can we truly be free of all thoughts. You can say we're free from our wuxing. You say free from our thoughts and free from being in the conditioned realm. so we can realize the unconditioned and have no thoughts.
然后下面是第五个就是三道不断故。他前面讲三道就是烦恼道，然后业道、苦道。当然，我们众生就是都会有烦恼，像我记得有人问仙公上人，有一个问仙公上人说：“你是不是开悟了？你开悟了没有？”仙公上人回答说：“我是没有烦恼。”所以这个是一个，他不讲有没有开悟，你讲开悟，他也不一定会相信。你这样子，所以他就讲，我烦恼是比较少，没有烦恼，这样子是一个很重要的。这个像这个三道里面，烦恼道。
So the next one talks about how the three roads do not stray from each other. What are these three roads? These three roads were mentioned before. They were the roads of affliction, the roads of karma, and the roads of suffering. You can see that from the pages before. And so, in terms of the road of affliction, there was one story that's been recounted by the Venerable Master, that somebody came to him and asked him, "Are you enlightened?" The Venerable Master didn't reply back about his enlightenment, but said, instead, I don't have any afflictions. So this is, you could say, an important point about lessening our afflictions to the point we have no afflictions. So the Venerable Master didn't say if he's enlightened or not. Probably the person wouldn't believe it either way. He just said he had less afflictions, he had no afflictions.
像业道，我们众生每天在生活都会造业，这个我们就被讲苦道，后面还有讲极苦的，所以这个是一个第五个他所证到的。第六个就是观过去、现在、未来，这个就是我们的一个三生，过去生一样了，过去生、现在生、未来生，他都看得清清楚楚了。
So number 3 is so in these three paths, the second one is the karma, the path of karma. So as living beings, as we're going about our daily lives, we create karma. That's just what happens to us when we're living. And the last one, the path of suffering, is what we'll go over later, is about how sufferings just accumulate. But just living and going about our days, we have a lot of suffering. As for number 6, is the past, present, and future. And one way to understand it could be past lives, the current life, and future life. So I think this is actually a interesting and useful contemplation, especially with the 12 conditioned links. Before, when we were looking at this section, it was actually on page 19, I believe. It's on page 19, the second paragraph. It says that ignorance conditions mental formations is the contemplation of the past. So the first 2 links is the contemplation of the past, and then goes from consciousness to feeling is contemplation of the present, and then love, or you can say craving, up to existence is the contemplation of the future. So I think that's really interesting that that's how it breaks it down in terms of where the past, present, and future occur. And so I think as a reflection for myself is that when we're looking at the Buddha Dharma, it gives us some kind of ways of understanding our experience, of how we contemplate and look at our own minds. And so here it's saying, well, what's happened in the past is ignorance and mental formations. But where we maybe have more, you could say, control over, more ability to do something with, is in this present moment. So here it says consciousness up to feeling is all within the present. And then when we go to love and craving, that's when it moves to the future. And so I think we've talked about it a couple times already in lecture, but basically for ourselves in cultivation where we're at, I'll say mostly the most important link is between the link of feeling to love or craving. Love is a tricky translation because love has so many meanings in English, but that link right there is basically where there is a potential for freedom, a potential for a kind of opening of space and consciousness, rather than just continuing the cycle. You can think of the 12 links almost like chains. You know, they kind of chain us down. They kind of create confusion in our minds because we, you know, think that things are a certain way based on our own habitual ways of seeing things. By breaking through these links, we actually can see things much more clearly and have a very profound wisdom. And so a very useful place to apply energy is right between the place of feeling and craving. And so how does that work? Or at least one contemplation that I find very helpful for myself is that basically everything up to the point of feeling is something that's been conditioned from the past. Meaning that the things that I've done in the past have made me when I come into contact with this object, gives me this experience, this feeling that I have about it. Either it's like or dislike. And I can't really control that very much. Unless you, of course, if you have a great deep insight, you can break the cycle at the very beginning. But for most of us, we really don't have access to the that. So what happens is when what's coming at us, you know, the colors we see, the place we're in, the people we meet, there's a experience of contact, right? If we just reflect on your own experience, you know, if you meet somebody, there's an experience of meeting the person, and then there's a feeling that occurs, like, dislike, and neutrality. So that's from everything we've cultivated in the past, everything now coming to the present, which is right in front of us. Now, what we do with that moment is what creates the future. So at that moment, if we go back to our recitation, or we, move our mind to something else, or do something that's skillful, then we don't create new karmic seeds. It doesn't continue this cycle. But if we go to craving and love and whole existence, etc., then that's the future, which creates in the end suffering and pain. So that's the process. So if we can catch our minds as early as possible in this process of contact to feeling, then we can really, I say, save ourselves a lot of grief and anguish. And it's in some ways not easy. This is something for sure I think if people need to have some time to meditate. As we mentioned, we've been doing meditation today on Saturday. We'll do it the next 2 Saturdays as well. But having some time to just sit quietly gives us the space to be able to observe this process. Because what you'll hear in kind of Buddhist jargon is this idea of sense impressions, sense contact. I don't know if you hear that term in any other place. Sense contact. Basically, when our senses meet an object, there's sense contact. And so from that point on, what happens? We have a feeling, we have craving, and this whole cycle continues. So the earlier we can catch this process in our minds, then when our senses hit some object and it starts having feelings about it and it starts moving on this path, if we can catch it earlier, then we still have a lot of freedom. But once we get enmeshed in it, we create views, we create opinions, we create attachments, we get all enmeshed in it, and then there's a lot of suffering. I think we see it all the time. So this 12 links is very useful in that way. It's very much a meditative practice. When we talk about contemplating, the Buddha's contemplating, I would say contemplating is not an analytical use of your conscious mind, your consciousness, like going and analyzing things. It's a kind of reflective quality, and particularly I think it's useful for when we can really connect the principles in the sutra, what we're learning in the sutra, with the actual day-to-day experiences that we go through, what we're happening in our minds moment to moment. the things we see. So that's, I think, a useful contemplation. So this idea of past, present, and future, especially when the 12 conditioned links, I think is very valuable, because it tells us where we can apply our energy and where we don't need to, you could say, get agonized over. So all those things in the past up to this present moment, that's already been planted. So trying to work on those things might not be the most skillful place to apply energy. But if we can do it on that next link when craving starts or aversion starts, then we can actually have some effect.
Okay. 这个过去就是会造成我们，因为我们过去生会造成我们现在这一生，那我们这一生会造成将来一生，这个就是一个循环。所以这个我们最能因为我是比较喜欢念佛。念佛的话，我们就是你现在就等于现在，我们现在这一生念佛，你念，那我们来生就会成佛，会，所以这个是一个因缘法里面之一，所以这个是不用再讲的事情。像还有一个非常重要鼓励的话，就是说，在佛陀时代啊，有人问佛陀，假如说我们出去的时候发生意外，不管发生死亡或者怎样子，那会怎么样子？那个佛陀就跟他讲说，你假如说在修行佛道上的话，就等于你一棵树，你偏向东的话，以后倒就是倒在东边，它不会倒到西边。所以就是说，我们在接近佛法，我们有这些佛，我们有念佛，以后一定是往佛道上走，往成佛方面去走。这个是一个很好的佛陀给我们一个开示。假如说有详细这个可以去查，有这个典故的。
So we're talking about the past, present, and futures with the three lives of the past life, present life, and future life. What happens to us in our present life comes from the actions and things we've done in our past, and the things that we're doing now will influence the future. This is an ongoing cycle that goes on and on and on. So for myself, I like to recite the Buddha's name. And so there's the teaching that if you recite the Buddha's name now, then in the future there will be an opportunity to become a Buddha. There's a story that's very encouraging when somebody asks the Buddha about cultivation, and let's say there is a accident, something that's unexpected happens, maybe even somebody dies. What happens? And especially when one goes out and traveling. The Buddha replied, well, in cultivation, it's like a tree that's growing. And if the tree grows, you could say, leaning toward the east, then when it falls over, in fact, it'll fall on the east. It won't fall to the west, because it's already leaning towards the east. Just like cultivating the Buddha Dharma. So if you're already cultivating and you're going that way, then when time comes for you to go, then you go towards the Buddha Dharma, because you've already planted those seeds and started growing in that direction. So this is a very encouraging story that you can go and find yourself in the Buddhist Tripitaka.
对，像这个我还在强调，就是说我们真的外面很难预料随时会发生什么。那当然我们心里念佛，万一那一刹那没有念佛，是不是就不会往生呢？我觉得不会。你那依照这个我们的中阴身里面啊，你念佛，你虽然一刹那忽然间发生这个事情的话，你到后来的时候，你还是会回到念佛，你还是会接近去念佛，去想到我以前念过佛，这个是在念佛的这个一定是你要说往生西方极乐世界就比较慢一点， 可能就是这个等中阴身它整个定下来以后，因为你其实讲起来就讲的比较细一点，就是魂神方面，你一下子忽然间一刹那发生这个事情，你来不及念这个佛号，所以但是你整个魂神稳定以后，一样的还是可以达到那种目的的，所以我还是非常鼓励大家这样子一个像也是刚才讲的那个例子一样，你种因就是得什么果一样的。
So I just want to encourage and emphasize this point. So for sure, we can't always control what happens to us in the world. Sometimes accidents happen, and we might pass away unexpectedly. And so people sometimes have doubt. Well, what happens if I die unexpectedly? In that moment, I don't remember to recite the Buddha's name. Does that mean I can't get reborn in the Pure Land? I don't think that's how it works. I think if you really are recite the Buddha's name regularly, then even that moment, if that moment right when you pass away, you don't quite remember to recite the Buddha's name, still we in between lives enter into this kind of, we call it, literally translated as intermediate skanda body, I mean this kind of spirit body, and it's a little bit hazy, but what I believe is that at some point we might gather enough conscious awareness again, and at that moment we'll come back to our Buddha recitation, and maybe our rebirth in the Pure Land will be a little bit slower, but still we have that opportunity to be born in the Pure Land. Just like that story that I just gave before about the Buddha saying how when, like a tree growing slanted to one side, when it falls, it will naturally fall in that direction that it's slanting. Oh, question. 问题。
Practice. Which experience?
That one passes experience of Sutra. That what will happen in the Zhong Shen.
这个
question, maybe Chinese too. You're asking, is the intermediate skanda body Jing Foshu's experience, or? Right.
这个在讲，我们在解释这个第六的过去、现在、未来。这个你现在做什么事情，你未来可以得什么果？这个就是我们现在经典的第六个这个，它观过去、现在、未来故。你是讲我们的
Yeah. Zhong Sen.
And then conscious will get together and then remember to recite. I think I have a question on that.
Oh, okay.
If that's mentioned any.
Oh, okay, got it.
Or is that from one's personal experience?
Okay. 他的问题是。他的问题是说，你刚刚说我们往生，对不对？到中阴身可能会，我们过不久，然后我们中阴身就可能不会这么迷惑，会比较清楚的时候，他们会记得去念佛，对不对？他就说这个讲法有没有在哪个经典有这样子讲吗？还是自己的经验呢？还是有这样子一个道理吗？他是不想知道来源。
这个你有那个要讲中阴法，有一个书可以看，就是人死以后，甚至于在中阴的阶段，他都可以把它像西藏这个比较多的一个法门。但是我们虽然没有这样子讲，但是我们可以去想象得到，你当 你痛苦的时候，你忽然间发生到，因为这个怎样子呢？这个要讲到我自己的一个在明尼苏达发生，有一个人发生车祸，就是车祸。那这个这个人发生车祸以后，他的境界，他可以讲很多他的境界出来，然后也可以像这些的事情哦。我想我们可能不要在这边讨论，这个可以找很多像这样子的在发生他跳开的，他的魂神跳开的这个事情，然后他可以看到很多的，然后像这个他也可以看到很多东西，可以看到人在做什么，这个都是可以。现在有很多这样子在讲法的一个说法，但是依照我们真正去讲这个，我们还是要回归到你的心念是什么，因为你的心念最重要，你的mind，我们人虽然死了，不是就没有了，你还是你有修行的这个，其实要讲这个心，不是讲我们现在这个心，这个心是无形的心，这个是无形的心。那无形的心，我讲一个我自己的所发觉到的，那个讲起来也是你发生过的，呀，在米索达，因为我是做生意，然后有一天那个在做一个 convenience store， 然后有一天那个抢劫，然后就伤到我们的一个职员，我当场也在，然后这个电视上都可以找到了，然后这个职员送到医院里，过了一段时间就往生了，但是当场我没有觉得因为我只有去救人啊，赶快的。那发生这个事情以后，你的所有都是非常存在的，但是你的魂神到晚上的时候、半夜的时候就不一样了。你的这个惊吓的这个神啊，就不一样。你就为什么叫做心惊胆跳？真的是一个心惊胆跳的这个，你的心到时候那个胆都自动跳了。我们常常心惊胆跳，都是讲名词一样。我自己是体会到，它自动这个胆就跳了。所以这个是一个非常一个。虽然我们那发生的时候，我们都是在现场去赶快处理什么样子啊，这样子叫救护车啊，然后就没有事。但是你到晚上的时候，你自己的魂神它自动它就会显出来给你，你自己那时候的情况这样子。这个是我自己的证到一个真的心惊胆跳是什么。而且这个心是不是我们这样肉体心，是无形的一个心，它都存在的。
但跳出来啊，
在震动了，心惊胆跳了。
Wow. Okay. So the question from Jerry was about the quote unquote intermediate skandha body. Basically, this in Buddhism we talk about there's a kind of a spiritual body, this kind of connection between lives. You go into this kind of spirit form, and so Dharma Master Jingfo said, there are books about this. There's books that you can go read about what people have in terms of what they experience in between lives. Actually, in the Tibetan school, Buddhism, they actually have some Dharma practices that talk about what to do in between lives. Often it's called the bardo, right? In between lives, there's ways that you cultivate the mind in between when you die and when you're reborn. And so, but regardless of this, we can think about it when we're, for instance, in a very painful moment, when something very traumatic happens. Like for myself, I was from Minnesota. I remember there was a car accident, and we were part of this Buddhist association. And this member of the Buddhist association, he had a car accident, a serious car accident, and then he went to this kind of state, this kind of, you could say, maybe it's an out-of-body experience. And he spoke about what his experiences were. Maybe we won't talk about that here in the evening lecture, but there's many, many stories like this when the spirit leaves the body and goes out and can see a lot. You can see what various people are doing, what's going on. And so there are stories like this. People can look into this if you want. But when we really talk about true practice, we really want to cultivate our minds. What actually really counts the most is what is going on in our mind. That's the most important. It's not that once we die, all of a sudden we just disappear. That's it. We're gone. Something continues on. But it's not this mind that we're used to. There's something deeper. The mind is, you could say, formless. It's got no appearance. It's this formless, no appearance mind. I have another experience, if you want to hear another experience of mine, was also in Minnesota. I, at that time, ran a business, in fact, a convenience store. And one day a robber came. Somebody came and actually killed or hurt one of the workers to steal something from the store. And so I was present at the time. I was in the store at the time. And even on the kind of the security camera system, it was all recorded. So we had the whole scenario there recorded. So the worker that was injured was sent to the hospital, and then a little bit time passed, and then they actually died. They went to rebirth. And so, although at that time I just went there to try to help out as much as possible to see if I could save the person, at that time, when the event actually occurred, we're just busy trying to make sure the situation is okay. But then at the night, in the evening, things are different, I must say. And you can have this experience yourself. There's a Chinese saying how, the something in the heart moves, the formless, something inside moves. It kind of literally jumps, kind of vibrates. And I felt it. There's something else that was vibrating inside. And it's something that happened at night, after everything quieted down. Inside I could feel it. So you could feel it too, if you really pay attention. This is something that people do report.
Okay, 这样讲那个中阴身那个有书有那个西藏的一个书在讲，下面我们进行到第7个三苦聚集故。三苦就是我们知道是苦啊、行苦啊，还有坏苦。坏苦，我想这个大家都可以很体会到，再快乐的事情，终究也是苦的。所以这个我们就解释到这里。
So the next one is number 7, how sufferings accumulate. Actually, there's a mistake in the translation. There's also supposed to be 3 sufferings. Should have how the 3 sufferings accumulate. And so the 3 sufferings are, it's a Buddhist list. First one is the suffering within suffering. Basically, you're already suffering, and then it gets worse. So you're hungry, and all of a sudden you're also freezing. or your house falls apart and you're now impoverished as well. So that's suffering within suffering. Sometimes people in the middle of a Chan session feels like they're suffering within suffering. Or maybe in this 24-hour Buddha recitation, they're suffering within suffering. People are fasting, on top of that not sleeping, and yeah. The next one is process, is the kind of the suffering of process, things just continuing on and on and on. The last one is the suffering of decay. And so I think this is something people also can reflect on and see that no matter how pleasurable the experience, ultimately it will decay and end up in suffering as well. So that's why they say there's a suffering of decay. Basically, everything falls apart.
然后第8是因缘生灭故，因为就是一直在生，一直在灭，就看到又升起来又灭，这个是一个循环。他也看到了这个所有的法因缘生因缘灭，这个一个生灭。
So number 8 is how causes and conditions arise and cease. So basically, how everything comes into being and then ceases to be. This is an ongoing cycle. They rise, they fall, they rise, they fall. This is something we see all the time.
然后第9个是那个系缚生灭系缚故，因为我们都是被生然后又死这样子绑得紧紧的。那他也看到了这个是真的是要这样子来，我想说最重要还是要能够不要执着，这个是很自然，有生有灭，这个是一定的现象，因为有生一定会有灭，这个是一定的道理。然后不被绑呢，就是你要能够放下，那你就可以得到自由。
So next one is how the arising and cessation of ties and fetters. Basically, all of us are bound up, are you could say tied up by birth and death, by things coming into being and ceasing to be. So what's really important for us to do is cultivate no attachment, not getting bound up by anything in the world. So for sure, what comes into be will cease to be. So it's for sure. There's no doubt about it. So what we need to do is learn to let go.
像我们现在禅期期间，也是就是参禅就是要去看我们自己的自性，然后就一直参。所以你也可以看到，我们要像上人讲的，参禅就是要像锥子追到最后，能够开悟了。那你像参禅的时候，我们已经都放掉外面的事情。其实讲起来，这个是一个已经没有被再绑住的这个，所以来参禅、来念佛也好，来修行也好，那已经就离开这个被绑住的这个。但是到最后，你连这些有为法无法，你也要放弃，这个是最重要一点。有为法有为法。
Okay, so here we're now cultivating Chan to investigate Chan meditation. And Chan meditation focuses on going and returning back to the original self nature, the awakened nature. And so we investigate using the method of the Huato. We go investigate Chan. We investigate. The Venerable Master taught that this is like a drill. We drill into it, and finally one day we can wake up. We can see things as they are. So to do this, we first have to put down all the worldly matters. So we come into the monastery and investigate Chan. By doing that, we let go of a lot of the worldly attachments that we have. then we can truly cultivate. And from there, wake up. So coming into the monastery, it gives an opportunity to put things down. And then ultimately, we also have to put down all of these conditioned dharmas as well. Even the conditioned dharmas we're using, we have to let those go as well.
最后一个就是第四个无所有净观，这个无所有就是看一切法都无有自性的，都没有，它本来就没有自性。你能够了解这样子，那你就不会执着，不会那个。
So the last one, it says the contemplation of nothing whatsoever and its ultimate cessation. So again, this is talking about how everything whatsoever has no inherent self-nature. If we can understand this, then we will be able to let things go and not attach to it.
这样子，我们今年是羊年，今年是羊年嘛，羊讲起来，可以在我的看法是，羊有很多种，你不管是羚羊也好啊，那绵羊也好，山羊也好，它都是像一些都是像我们写字的毛笔啊，都是也有羊毛的，然后我们的衣服也都是绵羊毛的制成，所以我们学习佛法，我们今年是羊年，其实讲起来，羊它的一个它好像它不会随便去侵犯人家，而且它都是随顺的主人啊，随顺的众生需要什么东西，这个也是讲起来是一个菩萨的，我们要学习像菩萨，他这个菩萨的精神就是这样子，我们就是牺牲自己去利益众生，所以这个羊年的给我们一个启示。另外还有一个羊的一个特性，它要吃奶的时候，它都跪下来，所以这个是一个非常好像是对他母亲一个尊敬以及报恩，这个都有，所以他一个跪乳，然后去吃奶的这个因为我也看过，亲眼看过这一些东西的，所以我们在学习修行、学习菩萨道，就是我们要注意到这样子的。
So this year is the sheep year. Is that correct? It is the sheep year. So, being the sheep year, I have some reflections about a sheep. I believe there's many kinds of sheep. Maybe some are sheep that live in the mountains, or maybe on the open land, open prairie. I don't know. There's lots of different kinds of sheep. And sheep, we end up using their wool for a lot of different things. Sometimes we use it for clothing. Sometimes we use it for like the brush that we use for writing calligraphy. So this year is the sheep year. And from my perspective, the sheep has a lot of bodhisattva-like qualities. For instance, the sheep doesn't really hurt other people. They're very gentle. And they generally accord with others' wishes. Whoever's the, you could say the owner, the host, the one who kind of owns the sheep, they just kind of go along with them. They're docile. They just follow along. So this is very much a bodhisattva spirit. They don't fight with other people. They just go along. They're willing to sacrifice themselves for the benefit of other people, of other living beings. Another very, you could say, very good quality of sheep is that when they drink their mother's milk, they actually kneel. So this is, you could say, a gesture of respect, also a way that symbolizes or gives us a sense of how they are grateful towards their mother and wish to repay their kindness is that they, when they drink their mother's milk, they actually kneel down. So this is something that I've seen with my own eyes. So I think this is all things that, given this year of the sheep, are good reflections for us to think about. Okay. Wendy.
When you mentioned to go along with people, that people will ask me, Buddhism is a religion of compassion and wisdom. So when does wisdom step in the process of going along with people?
听到问题？他的问题是说，如果你说跟随顺众生，但是他说佛法里是慈悲跟智慧，你要根据别人这个随顺众生就是慈悲，但什么时候是智慧？就是说什么事情都是随顺众生，怎么用智慧来随顺众生？
其实像普贤恒愿品里面，它有一条就是恒顺众生，其实不是就随便这样子，没有，它只是一个方便法，然后它最后还是会把它更正的，要只是时机一个看时机方面去那个，就是要比较长远。所以我就讲说，佛法不是说只有看眼前，是要看前面比较周延，能够圆满的看。所以就是要随顺，不一定要。你看当时可能是没有，不是那个，但是到后面他还是会去更正过来的，可以去更正过来，只是在一个方便而已。
So the question is about the principle of according with living beings. So where do you draw the line? Where do you apply wisdom? Because Buddhism talks about wisdom and compassion. Because the compassion is to follow along with living beings. And when do you accord with them with wisdom as well? And so the response was, when we're according with living beings, you can look at the chapter by Universal Worthy Bodhisattva's conduct and vows on according with living beings. And basically in this chapter it talks about how one accords with living beings. And you don't just accord with everything living beings do. However, you're able to really follow along with them and go along with them as a expedient, as a provisional method. And ultimately, you're helping them come back to what's true and proper. You're helping them get back to what's correct. But this requires you to make sure you do it at the right time and the right situation. You have to look long. You have to have a far-reaching vision. So when we're studying the Dharma, we don't want to have a very short-term vision just to see what's right before our eyes. In fact, we want to look to the long term. We want to take the long view. And oftentimes, if we take the long view, then we'll see that the situation is very different. It's not just immediately what's right before our eyes. Well, if I were to say according with living beings, I think you have to. Well, I think for me, the first thing I look at is my own assumptions and ego, as usually what I find is the problem is usually there, is where my own ego is somehow not according with living beings and creating some friction. That's the first place I look to see in this process of according with living beings. And then you're saying there's situations where when we're trying to accord with living beings, maybe it's not wise to accord with them because they might be doing something that's unskillful, and by according with their actions, maybe it's harmful. So that's true. I think there are situations that we can probably tell is basically not principled, and we should, not just go along with it. I don't think according with living being it means to go out and do bad karma and create bad things, but instead we want to be very, very skillful. But that's at the same time we have to be have wisdom when you do that, because of what I see is oftentimes where I think there's principle and I'm holding onto a view, it's just mostly my ego creating some perspective. So it's tricky. You have to actually really watch the mind and think, what's going on inside of my mind, and why am I? What's the principle? How do I go about this? And so usually I think according with living beings makes a lot of sense. Let me give an example. I think I mentioned the story when I became a monk. My mom was very upset with me wanting to become a monk. And so I was definitely not according with her wishes on pursuing this path. But at one point I realized that to go on this path, I could still maintain my resolve, but it doesn't mean I have to rub it in. I don't have to fight about it. In fact, what I could do instead was make it as low key as possible. Don't bring it up, but with everything else possible, accord with my parents' wishes. So if there's something to do and it needs help with, like my dad wants to clean the pool, and my usual response would be later, or I don't think the pool really needs to be cleaned, or I don't really want to do that. I just go and help out, or help out with the various things around the house, or just various things that I know my parents would like me to do, or me showing respect to them about who they are and what they're doing. And that's what I mean by according with living beings. I think most of the times we don't accord because of our own preferences, not because of dharma. It's because we like something a certain way, or we have a particular thing that we want to do, and therefore we don't accord. So the principle is, rather than just holding on to my own preferences, just let that go and just go along with other people and let them have their way. Most of the time, maybe it's even the other one I think that gets me a lot is efficiency. Sometimes efficiency seems to be the big thing, especially growing up in the Silicon Valley, is doing something efficient is seen as a really good value. And people are not doing it efficiently, somehow they're wrong by not being efficient. And actually with reflection, I think people realize that's actually not true. That's just another value or projection or assumption that I hold, that I put on a situation, and which causes confusion and friction. If I can say, that person can do it that way, maybe it's a little bit slower, or maybe they might be actually faster. Who knows? They might be seeing something different that I don't see. Or if I look and say, well, I'm here trying to cultivate patience, it changes the perspective. So I think in the end, according with living beings is actually a very useful principle, because most of the times in society, we're taught the other principle, which is, I want things my way. It's my way or no way. That's the teaching mostly we see in the world. And most relationships end up in a lot of problems because both sides think my way or no way. And then there is no way, because you can't have both ways be my way. Right? But if just one person goes, okay, you can have it your way, no problem. I'll just accord with your wishes. Then things go smoothly. I think you can see that in a lot of relationships. It's just one side can be, okay, you can have it your way. Then things work out. So, okay.
关于这个要用智慧去有智慧去给众生。我这样子再讲一个例子啊，就是在米索达那边有一个明州大学，它有一个房间里面有住2个女生，这个是 其中讲出来他自己的一个故事，觉得他是很有智慧。就是说两个人，一个有出世，一个有学佛，一个没有学佛。那没有学佛，他就都吃荤的，然后鱼啊肉啊都带进来，然后他刚开始讲看了也不讲也不行，就跟他讲，但是讲以后他起反感，他觉得不好，然后他怎样子，他还是跟他两个他没有搬出去，然后他还是两个住在一起，然后就每次利用修行的时候就回向给他去能够学好，能够断掉这个吃荤的这个，然后就做了几个月以后，真的因为他本来吃素，他真的就慢慢他就看到他在改变，后来就真的就没有再吃荤的了，就跟他一起吃素。这个我想说，这个一个很好的一个方式，可以用回向的，用我们心跟他回向，像释法师讲回向，这个都是有用的。像父母亲不好，我们可以用回向给他，请他学习佛法，或者是吃素啊，这个都可以，这个是很好的方法。不要直接去对冲，这样子不好。你越冲，它越反弹越大，就是改变一个方式。
So here's another example, which comes from the University of Minnesota, a college student, and there's these two women, female students, living together in the college dorms. One was Buddhist and ate vegetarian, and the other was just, you could say, is not Buddhist and was just ate meat and just the normal fare. And then so in the room, the one girl would bring in all the various food, meat and animals and various things. And so the Buddhist, the girl who was Buddhist, was felt kind of bad. She doesn't say anything. She also feels kind of bad, and so, but when she really says something, it doesn't really quite work out. So it was kind of she's not really sure how to go about it. So she didn't move out of the room. She stayed, but instead what she did was she didn't say anything about it. She just cultivated herself, and when she cultivated, she just transferred the merit to the other, her fellow dormmate, wishing that they would be able to become vegetarian, that they would not have to continue on with the habit of eating, animals that got killed. And so over time, after a number of months, actually the roommate changed. She slowly actually became vegetarian. So this is one method that's very powerful, which is that of transference. We don't have to go and directly fight against the other person to try to change the other person. Oftentimes, that just creates more resistance and less effectiveness. And so another way is transference, which is very powerful. We talk about that in the evening sometimes, how important transference is. So this also worked with parents. You can say, oh, my parents are no good, they're not they're such and such. But if we use the power of transference, we can really make things better.
Okay. 还有事吗？没有的话，因为我们现在是长期期间，以前我们都在圣城打禅期，那圣城有寄送啊，我觉得很好，我们可以看一看，在如来寺啊那边的一个寄送，大家可以看一下。
So now we have show and tell. So we're in the middle of a Chan session, and so in the Chan session at the City of 10,000 Buddhas in Tathagata Monastery, we have a verse that we hang up on the wall. This is in the Chan hall. It's a very big, it's kind of like the calligraphy here, but it's even bigger, and it hangs from the ceiling down. And this is the verse.
方佛城中打禅期，不知南北以东西。了生脱死非容易，无心道人以佛起。
Okay, 你要那个在那边就在这边对不对？ Yeah, here. So this is the verse. So this is the verse that hangs at the Tathagata Monastery during the Chan session. So as we walk around the Chan hall, and you can look at this verse. And so if you get discouraged, you can look at this verse. It's like teaching in Chan. So can we go catch in the bin? Oh, Fanny. So it translates as the first 万佛圣城, 万佛城, that's the city of 10,000 Buddhas. Zong is in. So and the Daf Tanchi is doing a Chan session. So here at the city of 10,000 Buddhas, we're doing a Chan session. 不知南北, we don't know of north or south or north. 与东西 or east and west. So we don't know any of the directions. So we're just so focused on Chan that we forgot all about which direction is what. 了生脱死非容易. So ending the cycle of death and rebirth, that's really not easy. It's not easy. And so the last verse goes, 无心道人, so a cultivator of the way who's free from all thoughts. Is 于佛机, means is somebody truly close to the Buddhas. So that's the verse on the Tathagata Monastery wall. If you go there, cultivate a Chan session.
我想这个是上年的开始，因为有人写在那个大的字纸上，这个是很好的一个寄送。
So this is probably a verse by the Venerable Master, and somebody wrote up in really big calligraphy, and we put on the pillars of the monastery.
今天我们在 Berkeley， 我也做了一个跟大家鼓励一下，就是说，伯克莱是打禅期，人生大事要分析，像我们现在在研究佛法，一样的。然后12因缘了其意，解脱正果即可期。 这个也是有印的，这个就是我们现在在学习12因缘，我们能够了解了它真正的意思，我们照这样子去做的话，那我们就有可以期望解脱，然后我们可以正果，然后就是有可以期待时间这个期望的。
So Jingpo wrote a verse for Berkeley Monastery for the Chan session, because we're doing a Chan session here. It says, here at Berkeley Monastery, we're doing a Chan session. 人生大事要分析. Just 分析? Yeah. So the great matter of human life, or we're born, the great matter of why we're born, is something that we want to investigate, we want to look into, we want to learn about. So now this is exactly what we're doing right now. It says 12因缘, that's the 12 conditioned links. So the 12 conditioned links, 了其意, we want to understand its true meaning, its principle, its meaning and principle. So here we're studying the 12 conditioned links. We want to try to understand what it's really about. And then 解脱正果即可期. So then there's some hope for us to become liberated and realize enlightenment. You can say the fruit of enlightenment, or the various stages of enlightenment. So by understanding the 12 conditioned links, then there's some hope for us to actually become awakened and become liberated. So that's the verse for Berkeley Monastery's Chan session.
这个是跟大家鼓励，我们共同努力。然后同时我也希望我们会中文的或者会英文的能够做句子的寄送的，我希望你们也能够写出来，然后可以给 email 给净传师，然后我们以后甚至于假设大家可 可以写书法的话，也可以写一个出来。我们有书法课，然后我们可以贴出来走廊上啊，或者是我还想以后我们的 CCTV 的走廊会有一些我们这边的我们弟子修行的那个书法的在那里展览。我想跟大家鼓励大家能够包括线上的那一些佛友都能够参与写寄诵，这个是上人所鼓励的。都写寄诵，然后能够写书法来寄来这里，然后我会拿到万佛生成去。这个是给大家一个信息，也是鼓励大家一起做的一个事情。阿弥陀佛。
So I encourage everybody, if you have the interest, to write your own verses. If you know English, you can write English. If you know Chinese, you can write a Chinese verse. And then once you write your verses down, you can email it to myself or anybody in the monastery. Or maybe you could just write it down and give it to us on paper. You can do that way too, on real paper. And there's a calligraphy class here in the monastery on Saturday afternoons, so people can also practice calligraphy. My hope is that in the future we can actually take people's verses in calligraphy and post them up in the monastery. And be very nice, encouraging words for us. And I can also bring it up to the 60,000 Buddhas, and we can also exhibit there in the hallways and various places. So it'd be really good to be able to exhibit the people's work here in Berkeley monasteries in terms of verses and calligraphy. The Venerable Master often taught through the verses and calligraphy as well. So, just say Amitofo to everybody. Okay. So we have the transference of merit. So Huisheng. Okay, so if there's any announcements, we have just today we had a Chan session starting at 6:15 and it finished around 3:50, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. People are welcome to join next Saturday as well. We have a sign-in sheet on the front door, and also on our webpage. People can sign up there and register. That's helpful, so we can know how many people will come for lunch, so we can order the right amount of food. And so that's happening the following Saturday and the Saturday thereafter. After that, we'll be back into our normal schedule in terms of Saturdays. What else do we have? Right now is the middle of a Chan session at CDB, so that's going on. Our classes at the monastery, some are still going and some are on break. So for instance, Stephen Tainer's class on Wednesday and the Thursday night East Bay Insight Meditation is still going on, but the rest of our classes on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday are on winter break. Okay. Is anything else? Anything else? No? Okay. So the transference of merit is on the back of your Dharma request sheet. And the way it works is you can take anything from studying the Dharma tonight, learning about how the world works, how our mind works, and taking that goodness and sharing with all other living beings. So this just depends on how big we can make our heart. Okay. As one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, May their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. We can all stand and bow to the Buddhas.